So we'll try to keep it quick as possible, but still,
That's okay.
oh, there we go. We have another one.
Come on in.
Today's March 24th, and it's 9 a.m., so let's get this meeting started. We have our consent items. Oh, sorry, I skipped right over that, I apologize.
All right. Greg Shelton.
Present.
Amy Ray. Yes. Anna Bordieri.
Yes.
Diane Turner.
Yes.
Keith Zustin.
Present.
Grace Stringham.
I'm here.
Marcy Howard. Here. Matt Olson. Rick Sudbury, excuse. Patrick Streeter, will wrap things. Robert Pino. Sherry Horn. Here. Tessa Swenson. Tom Sizer.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to quickly remind everybody, I spent the meeting last month online, and for people online, it is very difficult to hear conversations when multiple people are talking. So I just want to remind everybody, let's try to stay one at a time, and if you could state your name and represent the city for the record. Try to get through this a little quicker. I want to make sure everybody online has an opportunity to speak, because sometimes it's difficult to see those comments or hear them. So anyway, welcome again, and now we have our consent items. If there's any discussion, or straight to a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And we have our public comment time. Do we have anybody from the public or any emails or anything we discussed? Take that as a no. On to business items. Or the general manager's report.
All right, so we're trying to make this meeting as concise as possible, and I know the last one went lengthy, so just to allow enough time to have discussion. So the first topic on my report is talking about continuous improvement. We are always trying to find ways to improve processes or streamline so that we can cut costs or absorb increased costs, I should say. So this first one is talking about optimizing the driver apprentice program. So let me just refresh, and then so that you can understand what this program is. We were struggling to recruit and retain CDL drivers, and I know you've heard that for a number of years. So the team came forward with talking about an apprentice program. And what that is this specifically to get people their CDL. So the only qualifications for an apprentice is they have to be 18 or older and have a valid driver's license and be able to pass the DOT physical. So medically they have to be able to pass that. That's the only qualifications. So we started this program in 2023 with the board's approval. There were 5 FTEs that were needed, and a training coordinator, the 2 apprentices, and then the 2 trainers. So in looking at that and trying to make sure it was as least costly as possible, basically I worked with the team. We reclassed 5 vacant driver positions to make this happen. And so when we get down into the changes to optimize the program, I'll talk about those costs. So the bottom line is we started it out in 2023. We had 2 apprentices that were hired, Lori Turek, and then, excuse me, Jesus Becerril. And we had 2 trainers. They were promoted from within, Daniel Bergner and Linda Mahoney. So basically we kicked it off. The 2, Lori and Jesus, graduated last year. And then we brought on 2 new apprentices that are about to finish the program this year. What we would like to do is look at, and then also just so you know, this program is used for a career path. So people that are internal that have a desire to get a CDL. And most of those folks that are internal are container specialists. They're out there delivering cans, repairing carts, et cetera. And those are the folks that we found that really want to embrace this program and be part of it. So the changes to optimize the program is, just so you know, the two trainers are with their apprentice for a full year of training. And the reason we started it out that way is because it does, our requirements for an equipment operator is that they have to have a year of truck driving experience and 6 months with a CDL. So that was why the year was set. We have found that over time, we can actually shorten that training time because it's such an intense time being in a side load truck with that trainer. It's the best training that we provide is what we found. I think you may recall that just coming into this year, we did have a reduction in force. We found that the training coordinator position was really not needed. Unfortunately, we had somebody in that position, and I did talk to you about the need to reduce that. And so with doing that, we saved $120,000 going forward. Just to recap, going into 2024 budget season, we did request a driver FTE to backfill that training coordinator position, just to make sure we had enough drivers out there performing this. So the bottom line is the costs are mainly associated with labor, and that would be the cost difference between a driver allocation and the training coordinator, trainer, a job, which is about $8,000 per trainer per year. And then the two apprentices, which is roughly about $80,000 incremental cost. So total would be $176K. So we feel, honestly, in looking at this and evaluating it, shortening that time frame, we're going to save money in the long run. How much will just depend on the apprentices coming in and the benefits that they choose. The health insurance would be the variance there. Basically, we're looking at starting this right away. So we have Arturo Diaz and Juan Rios, who will be graduating from the program. And then we have Alex Hopus, who is one of the container specialists that will fill one of those spots. But the vision is that we will use that other trainer to train some of the newer hires that we have for CDL. We were already starting to see some of the issues with, they don't have the sanitation side load experience exactly. So we have two of those folks that will need more intense training from that other trainer position. So this is just an FYI. Always, respect direction or approval if you'd like to, but.
When we started this program, in my mind, my recollection, a lot of us just due to the fact that we were really having a hard time recruiting because the private moving as far as the building industry, things like that, we're just really having a hard time. And not Woodford, but across the board, I think they're having a hard time. But I know that, well, in our city anyway, we've seen building drastically decline. And so I'm curious if this is still needed. Are we doing a program to build something that we can go back to filling the wrong way? Because it does cost us, and it costs even because we have to have several, like 4 FTEs versus 2. And are they doing, and they're not doing like routes?
Good question. So they are fulfilling a route.
Okay.
So each of them, the trainer and the apprentice are doing roughly about a half a route to start with. And then eventually that apprentice moves into the driver's seat and they are completing the route. So yes, initially, if you want to take those 4 FTEs, they're completing 1 full route for the 4. And then eventually 2 of them are doing 2 routes, if you would. So yes, is it a legitimate question? Is it needed? And we have to ask that question as well. Right now, I can say that it is. In the future, if it is not, I'll come back to you with thoughts of adjusting again. But right now, it is needed. We're still continuing to have trouble recruiting CDL drivers.
Yeah,
So
I think it always had a good purpose like that. It built that role. And I also think it's good. I think sometimes internally, if you can take your people and do a career path and train them and give them that, I think that incentivizes loyalty a little bit.
Yes.
But, I always, just being cognizant of the cost of it, is a lot of FTEs that only, you don't really get one route, which we do, don't have to have that. I appreciate that we're always that.
Yes, ma'am.
And this is more or less an experiment to see if we can get away with the longer time frame of training. And if a particular driver, I would assume, needs a little bit more, you guys can optionally throw another week or 2 or 3 or whatever's needed.
Yes, that's the vision. There are the lead equipment operators that had done training in the past for new hires, but they're trying to run their route while training. So that was the thought of having trainer positions come about. So going forward, even if the apprentice positions may not be needed, we're thinking that the trainer positions will be. They're equivalent to a lead equipment operator, but their sole responsibility is to train new hires and apprentices coming in. And that helps with retention, because we already have a newer hire that has only been here for maybe, I think, 2 months at the most, and he's already had 2 incidents. And they're costly, but they're ones that we can manage in-house without filing a claim. But if that continues, then we're gonna have to let that person go, unfortunately. So the idea is that trainer could work with that person because he's a good soul and wants to be here and very loyal. We want to keep him.
Pam, can you, Anna with Taylorsville, their pay for the trainer, is that a stipend, an additional stipend to their regular pay, or is it an actual pay increase that will always be there?
Good question. It is a pay increase, so it's a promotional opportunity. That was the other thing that was appealing about creating this program that was needed, was that we could offer 2 more positions that were career ladder, or basically promotional opportunities, I should say. So yes, it's a allocated cost. I guess is the best way to frame it.
But the apprentice program was cut down slightly.
Yes, with the training coordinator position, yeah, so we trimmed it 120,000. Yeah. And then we're looking to reduce that even more with the apprentice, shortening that time, that window for them. Could it be $40,000 versus 80? And then they move into that full-time position? We just need to wait and see on that one, but I can report back.
Sounds like the training's paying off.
It really does. We really want to keep it.
Still going.
Oh, I'm done unless there's more questions. Sorry about that. There we go. The next one is actually strategic measures of success, and this has to do with employee satisfaction. And Hazel conducted the employee survey during the end of January, and I'm just going to turn it over to you and let you run free.
All right, thanks, Pam. I'll try and speak loudly. So, we had 91 employees at the time that we did this in January, and 56 of them responded, which is 61%. And we did it both by survey on the computer, filling it out on the computer, and then I also sat in this room about where Sherry is and have the ballot box, or not the ballot, but the locked box over there. And that turned out to be really good for the equipment operators, the drivers, and, I was trying to stay out of the way, but they actually would come and sit down and have a big, long conversation with me about things. So it really gave me a good sense of what's going wrong and, things that they were concerned about. So overwhelmingly, it was positive. Our employees, 88% said they understood our mission. We also, we have that in the board packet there, so I won't actually read out every question. But they also had an opportunity to leave comments. We did have 2 questions where it was 50-50%. So we never got into the negative. The way the scale worked was strongly agree, disagree, strongly disagree. And so I think that was a positive thing as well, that we never went below that 50% in the comments that they made. So then with the comments, I kind of put them into different categories: compliments, suggested improvements, and concerns. And we as a management team are working on those suggested improvements and concerns. So again, I feel like it was a really positive process. We, especially since taking into consideration that we had just gone through that reduction in force. And what was the other thing?
Switch to
PTO.
Yeah,
from the
it's the
two
same
separate banks.
Yeah. So we expected it to be a little bit down from what we may have had in the past. Anything you'd like to add or any questions?
Yeah, so this is one of our performance measures, as I mentioned. So we try to get into the 80th percentile with employee satisfaction. We'll get into the customer goal, customer satisfaction goal later. But yeah, it was the timing of the survey right after switching to PTO, right after the RIF. So as you can see, the bottom bullet says 61% of the employees felt secure in their job at the time of the survey. So, you know, to be above 50%, I think is kind of a win considering the situation. Would we like to do better than the 73% overall? Absolutely. Are we striving to do that? Absolutely. We as a management team had our retreat with Pam Gardio, in March, and then we followed up just last week as a management team, and understanding that we are the core of the organization and we have to work together as a team, and then it ripples out. So if we're not communicating as a team, if we're not holding ourselves or each other as accountable and being consistent in the messages we communicate with each other and goes out, we can actually have a negative ripple effect. So the idea is we've got to be a cohesive unit moving forward. And that is what we're working on right now. We've had some changes. As you know, you see different faces in front of you as part of our staff. So it is about coming together and defining our standards going forward. That's where we're at. That's what I had to add. I don't know if you have anything else.
You know, I think it says a lot, Hazel, that you've been here 2 years,
Almost 2
2 years, and that they feel comfortable enough that you're just sitting here and they come in and sit down and just chit chat with you. I think that says a lot and creates that feeling of security within an organization, or at least a place where they can be heard. And I appreciate that Woodford has gone through some real changes, from PTO and RIF and COVID, oh my gosh. And they can come in and they know they can reach out to you, so I appreciate that.
Any questions?
Not a question, just a comment. Marcy with Sandy, and I just want to comment on the 79% understand how their work directly contributes to our success. I think that is a sort of use your language win as well. To have employees understand not just what their job role or description is, but to understand how it connects to the greater success and the outcomes that the organization is accomplishing. I think that's significant because you don't often have an employee who can answer a question of, well, I know my role, but then to be able to convey, this is how my role affects the overall organization is significant. So back to also your leadership retreat and management retreat and thinking about the connectivity of the greater organization. I just think that is something to be highlighted and celebrated. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that very much. Yeah, there are some successes in there and some pizzazz that I think that Pam G calls them that we can celebrate, and then also know that we have some work to do. I would also like to add that we, through some of the feedback from staff, the Operations Effectiveness Committee was developed. That's 10 drivers that come in, and Renee facilitates this group. They were meeting weekly, and when they first started meeting, it was a forum. And, you know, through COVID and everything else, we didn't have the forum for people to gather and just talk or let it out, whatever we need to do. So getting back into the swing now that we have staff that are here that can help support this process. The first meeting was 3 hours. Which is not surprising. I remember way back when I first started having management team meetings, they were 3 hours or 4 hours. It's like, so, just trying to get everybody to storm and form and then norm, right? The old adage. So anyway, now they're roughly an hour.
Yeah, that and now that we're getting into busy season, talked to just we didn't have to run out. Now we're taking it this month. And we've seen some real significant progress. Like we've been celebrating, there's 12 different items, just some process changes and just, I think, listening. What did I say? I was hoping this would be bridge. And staff. That was my goal with this, and I think soon as it changes there, we're listening. Just hearing that.
It's awesome.
It's really good.
Sorry, it seemed like back right after COVID, when we did this, that was the biggest feedback, was no communication, and that was difficult because of that situation, but it sounds like you made really good changes to fix the problem.
And thank you. We work hard to do that, respond. Thank you. Okay, the next one, unless there's anything else. So I talked about the leadership, management team leadership retreat. Just want to revamp our mission and our vision and the culture, our desired culture. The compassion, respect, and development. I think that's really the core of what we want to focus on as a team. And then, as I mentioned, to be cohesive going forward. If we're not communicating with each other and holding each other accountable, our core is just not going to be strong. And that's when it's just like what I've been doing lately, trying to develop my core, So anyway, I don't know if there's any questions on that, but we'll just keep rolling. And then the next one is customer satisfaction survey. So with this one, we do have a goal of to sustain a 90th percentile with customer satisfaction. And Renee is the one that really spearheaded this project. And I want to thank her for that. I also want to thank Hazel for spearheading the employee survey process. And so we have some results here for you. And Renee, do you want to take it over?
Sure. Yeah, so as you can see here on the page that I'm sharing, this shows by city, the respondent percentage. And what we can see here is that the percent of responses mostly correspond with 1% of homes and service in the district, which is pretty cool to see. There's a couple of exceptions. Curve is about half what we would normally expect in responses as compared to ones that we serve there. Then Sandy and Copperton right there, they have a slightly higher percentage of respondents. So that was just a little piece of data that I was kind of cool to see.
Yeah. City size, yeah.
When do we move on here? This was split pretty evenly with this question. How many people live in your household? I say it was split evenly. See that 47% two or more, which is those top two colors right there, green and blue. And then 52% have 3 or more folks that live in their home, which is yellow, blue. So to me, that feels split pretty evenly, which then makes me feel good about the responses we got to kind of feel from the different subsets of how many folks are in their home, services that they're getting from us. And as we look at these bullet points down below here, again, to Anne's opening, comment, we're slightly lower where we want to be at 90%. We're at 86%, but as you can see here, our service-specific stats are showing pretty good, considering, our favorite program that I'll go into on this next page, our STAT program, that generally is the most of the comments that are in there, just how they miss that, putting it on the street and becoming our on-street sites. Anyways, so any questions before I go on?
Who knows 98% website payment options and 93%
So, thank you. That's huge.
Yeah, that saves us money in the long run.
Yes.
And closer will go in its master.
So much more efficient.
I have a quick question. So, just for background, I have over 30 years of experience in education. So when we look at data and we're looking at learning performance and proficiency with students, of course, we're always chasing the high percentage as well. But one of the things we look at is what we kind of call the bubble kids, like the students who are just this close to proficiency. And so I'm thinking particularly in regards to recycling, when and I should say, our overall rate of satisfaction, what would you say it would take to move kind of the 10% were neither satisfied nor dissatisfied, the 7% were neutral, the 10% were neutral, kind of the bubble. They're sitting on the bubble. They're not dissatisfied. What do you think it might take to move them from neither satisfied nor dissatisfied to satisfied? Because we're like so close to that proficiency mark that we want, they're not dissatisfied. What do you think is getting in the way of moving them to say, I'm actually satisfied?
I think, my and I would of
Go
course
for it.
refer to co-parenting, but my personal opinion is the seasonal container reservation. That is just the, in my opinion, the tipping point, either way. And I'm actually quite excited about this year to try this new process that we just started doing, that whole prioritization. And see if they may feel that's a little more equitable folks to where it's like we're saying, hey, you're getting your early bird, day to go and reserve early access, So, and I can tell you so far up front, it's been a lot quieter than I've experienced in my 3.5, almost 4 years here. So I think that would, if folks feel well more comfortable with the program, because it's really important. We all know, right?
Nope, you hit it.
No, I would agree with you. It seems to me that's the area where we hear the most complaints. So it addresses those, which I think we really do. I'm with you. I'm excited about this.
I do too. I think it's.
Yeah. So scrap acceptance. We were talking about, seasonal container reservation program to take this forward. Let's see here. One of the things I want to highlight on the scrap stats here is that the rolled down. The 90% said that no one unauthorized used their containers. That to me is huge because that means that it's working as planned, right? Because that was one of the big, I think, reasons, besides the fact that we couldn't find enough folks to work, the program during COVID. That was when we changed, and also, the water safety, just because it became, basically the dumping down on the street. We had some environmental concerns with that as well. But anyways, I think that that was a huge challenge to be in. Right. So we're allowing folks that they've authorized because it's now on their property. Hey, the share neighbors, come on in. And as you can see here, 74% said they shared.
I'm not saying that we should shoot for the 90%, but I actually think that those numbers in the mid-70s is pretty good, considering to say it's very easy to reserve a container, and most of the complaints I hear about is how difficult it is. And there are some barriers as far as timing and different things that some we're trying to address and some we can't address that are real barriers. So I think considering those things, I actually think that those are pretty great numbers. And to have 78% overall satisfaction. But I still get the impression there's a lot of people who would do anything to go back to the old system, and they're still wanting that. Just to even get that close to 80, people are like, okay, this works for us. I think is more reflective of people really wanting the old system rather than the system not being functional working. So I actually think that will change just as people become more used to this system and it becomes more familiar to them.
And if I just may, to note on historically, even when we had the area cleanup, when it was out on the street, we rarely went above 80% satisfaction. So this is.
So people are complaining
This
one way.
is kind of, yeah.
It's actually good to know.
Yeah.
And we definitely have a lot of unauthorized use.
Yeah.
Yes, I believe there was more
And
contractors, just people that
Yeah.
about it.
landscapers.
Yeah, we had, so I live on a private road and you guys used to drop off 2 dumpsters for, there was 15 or 16 homes on that road. There's always one at closer to 106 South, one down further. And you'd see people just pulling in with trailers,
Yeah.
just dumping like construction material and those things and then get down as fast as they could, it's like, so it's definitely helped in our area.
Yeah.
You know which cities do that so that I can go?
Salt Lake City, Sandy. Yeah, bro.
You take your license, you get off in 10 minutes.
So now in Sandy, you don't even have to find a dumpster, you just find another pile that's already.
It's true. I don't know how you guys do that.
Well, now we have a lot of residents that walk when you get, in all fairness.
I mean.
They do love it.
They love it.
They're.
And I grew up in Salt Lake and we loved it.
Yeah, no, we have great compliance.
You'd have mutiny if you took it away.
Oh, we did.
Yeah, you did.
So we're gonna present that for sure.
Okay,
It's not going to.
let's circle back up, I promise you're trying to get us out of here early. So let's circle back and continue our.
Go ahead, Renee. Yeah.
But, Woodward operates on fees. I wasn't surprised by this response, especially, sitting close to customer service and just hearing, as we're talking to folks and they have to explain, and even when I talk to my road customers, I'm like, no, we are not a tax-based, organization, but, so I think we've got some more education to do here, looking at 43%. Then with the costs, when asking about the specific programs and what residents would be willing to give up to save in monthly costs, we can see that they definitely would not give us. So we got 60% that said no, they would not be willing to save that $1.40. And here it's for the regarding switching to bi-weekly recycling program. It's pretty close. 47% said they'd be willing to. 53% said that they know they would not.
Can I, Matt Wilson, as I looked at that statistic, one thing that I just want to point out, that is something that we've talked about a lot. That is something that some cities currently do. And I think that that's probably a topic that will continue to come up as the years down the road. But I do just want to at least caution, as we look at these statistics of who answered, yes, 50% are the 1 and 2, and then there's 50% of 3 and 5. But the issue is that truly reflective of the people that live in our cities and our districts? For instance, I know that if I wasn't on the council, that the chance that my wife would have filled out this survey are 0. We 8, 5, 18-month-old, no chance. And so I do think that if we were to ever truly make a decision, that we would have to put some money forward to truly try to reach every individual, because those families that probably need the weekly pickup are the people that can't fill out the surveys, they're just not paying attention, they're trying to survive. So just throwing that out there, as I've talked to my neighbors, the ones that had, the Ricks right next to me that had 7 kids growing up, or raised 7 kids in that home, they needed that weekly pickup. They fill out the survey today, which they did. It is, we have no problem. We could get it once a month and go totally fine because they just don't need it. And everyone's just at a different stage that I don't want us to look at that specific data and say, we should go to that.
I want to second Matt and say because just because we did this as a random survey, it means that our data isn't really organized and structured. So with this roughly 60% response rate, and then roughly half of that. So really you have a little over a fourth of each side saying yes or no. So we just don't have enough comprehensive data to really make a massive change like that. So, but I do think it's worth continuing to look at, but I think, as you said, we need to we need to make sure that our data is more reflective.
Those are good points, Matt.
Yeah, and just to be more piping in on that is, when we set these specific survey just a couple of years ago, it was overwhelmingly popular to keep the, it was focused on recycling only. Yes, keep weekly recycling.
I think it was like 95% supported to keep it.
So one thing that we could look at, because I actually know some people that do have multiple recycling cans, but maybe if we could pull that number and determine what that looks like percentage wise of our total customers or even total our community, that might give us a little bit of an indication as well as to if somebody's got 2 cans, they're obviously not going to be willing to go to every week. But how high does that number look? Because that kind of can give you a respondent to say no for the bi-weekly recycling, just as a consideration.
So the other thing that I'm seeing in my neighborhood as well is people that have 2 garbage cans, and when that recycle is full, then they're just using the garbage can as well, so.
I was just gonna say, we used to offer a second recycling can at no charge, when we were receiving revenues. And then we started charging a fee, and I don't remember exactly when, but it was a $3 per can fee additional. And we saw a little bit of a decrease of those second recycling cans. They wanted to send them back. And then we raised it to $5, I think 3 years ago or 4 years ago, and that's when we saw more coming back.
Yeah.
So I think it does make a difference if we're gonna charge a fee or not.
Sherry with Hartman. I agree with everything that's been stated, but I think there's also some other nuances we can look at. I asked last month or a couple months ago, how full are the cans? And it's not, some of them could be full, but it's because they're all compressed boxes. You know, you could fit 3 times as much in there if you break down your boxes. And so some of that can be taken care of with training and it reduces costs. And just by educating the public, those types of things, I think that there are families like she talked about that really want, and so maybe we have to look at, you know, you can apply for an additional can or something like that because you're in that situation. But then the people who use it once a month are paying for it to be picked up every month. You know, it just seems like there could be, we don't have to look at a one size fits all. We can look at some options for people and solve some of it by looking at some different variables there. Not changing the driver route because that costs money, but saying, okay, these homes that have 7 kids, they need weekly pickup, if not, they need 2 cans, so how can we, you know, just trying to look at things differently. I'm not suggesting we do it now, but it seems like there are things that we can look at, certainly training, because I go out to mine sometimes and have 30 kids living in the basement, I'm like, guys, break these boxes down and fit something in here. But it just, but training people to do that kind of thing would really help because there's a cost associated with picking up a 5-pound can versus one that's 50 pounds because they compress them off.
Yeah, the set out rate and then also how full are they?
Yes.
And then lastly, billing frequency and associated costs with that. Showed here that 74% of our respondents were neutral or supportive, moving away from quarterly to monthly billing, rather than would be associated with costs. No, right, so 60%, they were.
Questions before we move into the big question of the day about something else? Yep, well, before, anything else on the customer survey? Okay. So, moving into Solid Waste Association of North America, that's SWANA. They have an event or two events every year. I was asked to be the keynote speaker and, yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's really nice.
And when I was asked in February by Preston Lee, who works for Wasatch Integrated in Layton. And I was pondering, well, what am I going to talk about? I wonder what should I do? And then all of a sudden I get the flyer. He said, I'm going to send you a flyer. And I was like, oh, okay. And then it was minority leadership and the challenges of the waste industry was my topic. So I focused on Women's History Month since, it's March and it's Women's History Month. March 8th is International Women's Day, and I always remember that because that's my oldest sister's birthday, who is just a phenomenal woman and hero in my world. But just focusing on that and just some information for you as a board. And we as women, we make up just over half of the population, but yet in the waste and recycling industry, we're only 17% of the workforce. And that's a study that was done by the National Waste and Recycling Association Women's Council back in 2022. But that was an increase from the 2020 census that showed that we were 15% of the workforce. So that's an increase. But looking at WFWRD, what are we doing? So when I first started, we had one female driver and there were two of us, other women's that were, handling things and customer service and so forth. So now we have 7 women drivers, CDL drivers, which is 11% of our drivers. That we have 65 total drivers. And then we have 14 women in leadership, admin, and customer service. So we are at 21% of our workforce. And so proudly, we exceed the industry standards nationwide. And then you can see the pictures below. That's our customer service folks on the left. And then we have some of our equipment operators in the middle. And then Helen and I joined, and Katarina joined some of our drivers from the right side too. So, and then Melinda Mahoney is one of our trainers. She's right there in the middle in that light colored blouse. And Rhonda Kitchen on the left, giving a thumbs up, was the first female National Waste and Recycling Association driver of the year back in 2017. And there's still only Rhonda. So yeah, we hope to have more folks. Anyway, that's just an FYI, and touting WFWRD and being such an all-inclusive work environment is what we strive for.
It's great. It's to your credit. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, it's a great accomplishment.
Thank you.
Looks like we've got a request to move to the billing statement in 2026.
All right. So Helen has done a great analysis of the information, but before we get into that, I just wanted to kind of recap and give an overview. We've been evaluating whether we should move to monthly billing. We've been quarterly billing since 2015. Just to kind of give a refresher, overview or introduction. When we first left Salt Lake County in 2013, we did not have a billing system. The bill had always been on, or the fee has always been on the property tax notice as a separate fee in the past. When we left, we were given the task of billing. And so the board had the decision, whatever frequency you wanted to do. It could be monthly, it could be quarterly, it could be annual. So in the past, it was annual. Upon separation, and we realized that we wouldn't be able to do annual. We did it the first 2 years, 2013 and 14. We just basically told residents, you can let it go on your property tax notice, or you can pay it all at once. We won't charge any fees if you let it go delinquent on your property tax notice. And then 15 is when we really rolled out the quarterly billing. When we first did a survey way back when and asked residents what they would prefer, monthly and annual. In fact, annual took the most weight, but we knew we couldn't do that. Monthly, we knew there'd be an extra cost. We went ahead and rolled out the quarterly billing. So since that time, and we looked at cash flows and so forth, and Helen's really dove in. I'm not going to steal her thunder, but just to recap, you saw the billing question on the customer satisfaction survey and the frequency. So if you look at the question before you get to the dollar amount, you can see that neutral people you have very supportive 18%, somewhat supportive 15%. Neutral got the highest percentage of 43%, and you have some somewhat unsupportive of 7, not supportive at all at 17. Then you move down, of course, to ask the question. That's going to be an increased cost. The only thing we didn't ask on that particular question is just to point out this may not trigger a fee increase. right? Or be the sole reason for the increase. Somehow we, just putting that in there, we didn't do that, but it was a yes or a no. We didn't offer any kind of neutral or neither yes nor no. So it's a 70-30 split there with no, taking the most votes on that one. But we still feel that for business practices and cash flow, we still would like to propose this to you, have a discussion, debate, going forward. So anyway, Helen, I hope I didn't steal too much of your thunder, but would you mind kicking off with benefits?
Yep, I'd be happy to. The primary benefit for my purposes is the increased cash flow, the more frequent cash flow. We've talked about this a little bit before in prior meetings, but we don't want to be in a position where we start to have to making decisions on what to pay and what not to pay. Emergencies happen, certain things come up unexpectedly. We need to make sure we have enough cash on hand to take care of those situations. And I do have a graph on the next page that will kind of demonstrate that. The next is just keeping higher dollars in the accounts earlier, there's more interest. Payment amounts, we feel that payment amounts are easier for residents to manage, $26 monthly versus $78 bill quarterly. And also, most utilities do monthly billing as well, so it would be in line with customers, other utilities and how they're paying their bills. We would be able to catch changes of ownership sooner, so we could reconcile the accounts and receive payments from title companies sooner, and that would result in lower refunds, lower dollar amounts of refunds. We'd be able to catch billing discrepancies sooner and make adjustments if necessary, which would increase customer service. And then those adjustments themselves would be lower dollar amounts as well. And then we'd have increased cash receiving for the current year versus, holding it over for the next year, so a lower accounts receivable amount. And then also our billing system that we use is utility management with Excel, and that was designed to do monthly billing. We've kind of forced it to do quarterly billing and still have some manual processes in place to make that work for us, and it has worked for us. But my feeling is that we could drop those manual processes hopefully and increase billing efficiencies by using the system as it was intended to be used. And then next is the graph I was talking about. What this is, the blue line is the cash balance from the beginning of 2023 through the end of 2024 by month. And the orange line is the cash outlays or expenditures for that same time period. You can see that in 2023, the gap between the blue and orange lines is very comfortable. And if you look back into prior years, it was that way for several years before that as well. Then we get into 2024, and we had some capital expenditures that were over $3 million in May and 1.5 in August, that were payments for trucks that were ordered in prior years, but because of all the delays out there, we didn't get them until this year. So we had to pay for them all at once. And that drew down our cash balance. And we can see how close together these blue and orange lines are where they did not cross, fortunately. But you can see where the potential was that they could have crossed at that point. And that is what I would like to avoid by increasing the cash flow and having more cash on hand.
Wouldn't we be in trouble? Like, if they did.
It's a very bad thing, yes. Yes, having those two lines cross would be a very bad thing. So,
Is the reason why we're in because essentially with these trucks that we had ordered in previous years and then we kind of got them all at once in 2024. But we were setting aside that money for those purchases previously. Is that why we had such a comfortable balance previously?
because we had that in reserve, basically waiting for it to be paid.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, yes and no. And then the other thing is the increased expenditures operationally, personnel wise, which also took down that fund balance. And so the cash is related to trucks, but the fund balances and the increased cost there, that rollover of underexpend previously really went down as well. So it's two pots of money, if you would.
Yeah, it was an inevitable decrease in closing of those two lines. It happened a little bit faster because of that, those truck purchases, but that's why we had to do our $6.50, such a large fee increase for 2025. It's because those lines were going to converge anyway.
Yeah, so does that help. And then we know, as staff, we understand raising the fee going into this year, going forward, that will broaden that, gap that we like, going forward. However, there's still some concern, we've ordered trucks, 8 replacement trucks that are, and the board did authorize diesel trucks to save $400,000 of purchase price, but we will not see those until 2026. So I think through this year, our cash flow looks pretty good, looking at cash inlay and outlay that Helen and Matt put together. We're still showing right now, about a 6.9 cash balance at the end of this year. Yes, sir.
Immigration. So as we're looking at this blue line, and if you look from the left to the right, with the adjustment in fees, is that going to level? It's going to kick up a little bit? What is the predicted slope of the line?
I believe that the answer to those questions is yes. It will level and slope up a little bit, and that is one of the reasons that at the end of the year, that cash flow projection does include this fee increase. And that is what boosts it back up over $6 million at the end of the year. So yes.
How many homes do we serve?
Just over 86,000.
Okay. So it's about $660,000 of an increase in cost to residents with that 64 cents?
Oh yeah, if you scroll to the next page, Renee, I think that's where we have the costs.
Yes.
Good job.
And I would love your help in better understanding or explaining why that is a justifiable increase. So for instance, if let's say that was, you didn't do it once a month, but we needed more revenue, I mean, that same fee, that's almost $700,000 that we would put into the district.
Say,
And correct, and this would just be a cost to payment processing, is that?
Well, it's a combination of payment processing, yes, and because we would be adding 8 billing cycles, of course, if we were to go to monthly billing. And so it's a combination of payment processing and printing and postage costs, yes. That's what the most of the costs are. And we do have some ideas going forward too. And to answer your question on justification, I anticipate that we are going to implement some ideas to mitigate these cost increases going forward. So we don't believe that we're going to have to be adding that into a fee increase because we're going to hopefully be able to draw down some of those costs, mitigate those cost increases and not experience that really year over year. But for right now, what we're asking for is to go forward and have you hopefully approve us to go to monthly billing starting in January 2026. And then, of course, we'll be working on cost mitigation efforts on an ongoing basis.
What are some of those cost mitigation efforts?
So one of them is right now we have about, 86,000 customers. I think we have about 25,000 of those customers who are on e-bill right now. And I would like to try to do a kind of a push to a campaign to encourage more customers to go onto e-bill. I think there are probably some customers who don't know that we have it or haven't thought about it. And that would decrease that printing and postage increase. We also have our online payment transactions. And one of the things that we would do, and we would do this anyway, but go out to bid and see what we can get for maybe lowering the cost of those items. Maybe we might have to switch vendors. We might not have to, depending on what they come back with. And then we do have, I do have another idea about mitigating some of these costs. And it could be a little bit touchy, but I would like to eventually propose a transaction fee for credit card payments. So, and that would cut down a lot of that cost.
Because you could do an ACH no fee.
Then we could set it up.
Credit card for the fee. I mean, I don't think that's too much.
Yeah, I agree with that.
yeah, I do too.
So it sounds to me, realistically, those efforts all seem like they could bear a bit of fruit to lower this 64 cents per household.
Yes,
significantly.
significantly, yes.
How much would that? I mean, processing, well, that would save very significant amount of money.
Yes, it would.
And that doesn't require getting people to opt in compliance, like switching to e-billing, you have to get people on board for that. That one, just very easily.
And people are getting used to it. I know Taylorsville was finally, you had to nudge it a little bit, go to a processing fee. I mean,
Your federal taxes.
Yeah.
It's
That's right.
everyone.
it's everything.
Maybe IRS.
And
Several
really-
different cities have gone to that.
Yes, and really just, oh, sorry, Emily from
No,
Holly.
you're fine, you're just starting to get overlap with, online, it's very hard to see.
That, I feel like people are just as used to that, and really because of ACH, it's just as easy to set that up for most people than it is for credit card.
Right, yeah, I do think it's important to have a fee-free option for people,
Yes.
but there is no way to bring it down for credit cards, you want me to have that, just talk about it.
Did you like to see the,
I have some information on that during.
we didn't know for sure if that would be,
Very much.
okay.
Do we have the ability to get that up to Lori or additional copy?
There is the, I'll make it check.
It's on the H drive in the board packet, yes. That's right.
Someone could send that to.
Yeah, go to the board, today's board meeting. Yeah.
So Matt Holton, Cottonwood Heights City, greatest city in the district.
Hey, sorry, you don't have the floor.
So potentially, we may not, if we go to monthly billing, I would like to go to monthly billing, I just wanted, $660,000 is a lot of money. So is there a scenario where we would not need to impose that additional fee? We could find savings elsewhere, because I would definitely be much more supportive. Because we just did it.
I don't think we're increasing the
No,
fee with this.
This is just explaining what the cost is going to be by doing that, whether or not it goes to the customers has not part of the discussion.
Well, it just says in this poll, there would be a cost increase of an estimated 64 cents per home per month.
Cost to the district.
Well, I think that really was misleading to
Yeah, it should have been written that way.
The survey actually had several leading, points like that, like we are increasing because we can't, and we've got to be very careful about that because consumers and customers tend to read into those. So we've got to be very careful.
Well, I would have read it the way that I would have read that.
Yeah, because if it's just a cost to the district, why would you impose that to the residents in a poll? Because there's a lot of costs to the district, we're not imposing new products.
Yes. Because eventually it would end up.
Because we're transparent.
It's, yeah. Like I said, we just have to be careful about how we do present that to the customer. But yeah, this wasn't, I don't believe, intended to be, we're raising rates by 60% per household if we do this.
Understood, thank you.
I think that's I think that would
Yeah.
dramatically change chances.
They very well could.
Like, great.
Yes,
Sharon,
sure.
Sharon. I guess, I would be the devil's advocate on, it doesn't increase. We just said the very first question was, do you understand we're fee-based?
Yeah.
If we increase costs, it increases fees.
Yes.
It's just simply how it is. At the end of the day, it will increase their costs.
Well, that's what I was saying is that at the end of the day, yes, but it doesn't mean that tomorrow, when they implement this, it's going to result in a fee. It would be down the road when we can no longer hold it within the budget.
Right, but we're just kicking the can down the road.
Yes.
Well, I think about.
I'm just gonna finish it twice if that's okay.
No, sorry, I said it.
No, you're good. I am, so I think that $660,000 and we're all aware, I was no on the rate increase. And I still believe we have to be focusing on bringing down costs, not increasing them. And everything I see on here is convenience based, which I 100% get. It makes things go more efficiently for you. It's easier, those kind of things. Even as a resident, it's easier to say, oh, I'm just gonna pay that with my utility, those types of things. Totally get that point, but it's like, it's a lot of money. It's over $500,000, $660,000, and that's not a one-time thing, that's every year. Now, somebody brings down some of those costs we talked about, reducing postage. Well, if we reduce postage, then guess what? Our processing fees are gonna go up because those guys are gonna be paying it there. And then it was, well, then we'll charge it to them. Well, then we're still charging. Do you see what I'm seeing? If we're saying, okay, but but then we're gonna recoup that cost by charging you a fee somewhere else. There's still a cost that's associated with changing this, no matter if we say how we change the pockets, still the pocket. And so I guess that's my hardest thing. I can't see how this. And I guess before I approve something that was $660,000, I would want to say, okay, here's the things we're gonna do to make sure it's not 660, but we're just gonna explore those, which I understand, because it's like the process, we have to go through an experimental thing, but to me, it's a huge chunk. Another thing that the district has that our competitors don't have is no risk on collecting money. The reason people don't understand we're fee-based, they think it's on their taxes because it used to always be on your bill.
Right.
You never thought about paying it, it just came with your tax bill. So they assume that, and for sure we go out for, I forget what we call it at the end.
Delinquent fees?
No, the certification, right? We do certification and almost never do we not get that collected. When we don't have to worry about hiring people to go after, late payments and things like that, collections and stuff. We don't really have that concern and that worry. So that's another thing that's really built in for security of the district is, yeah, we might have to go 3 months, we might have to go this amount of time, we might have to go a few months because it gets certified and then a few months before we actually get the revenue back, but we get it. And a lot of people don't have that security in a private business that have that advantage. So those kind of things are super concerning to me about, it just feels like it's the wrong direction to go spending an extra 660,000 because no matter what we do, the people are gonna pay for the change. So this 64 cents, they're gonna pay for it, whether they pay it in processing fees or whether they pay it on the rates a few years down the road. So anyway, and so I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Those
Let's not go back.
are actually great, sure. And I was only trying to clarify what the survey question was. I wasn't actually coming against what you're saying. I actually do agree. So we do need to be very careful. Anyway, go ahead.
No, I think you covered it. I'm good.
I wholly agree, 665,000 is a lot of money. I think if I'm hearing correctly, the biggest contributor to that is the postage and the processing, or postage and printing, correct?
Well, postage and printing and the transaction fees would increase because of the fees that are charged on a transaction by transaction basis for the number of transactions.
But a lot of times those are percentage. So whether it's $20 or $70, it's a percent. So it's going to be the same whether it's monthly or every 3 months.
Unless
Or
it's
like
a fee,
Unless it's
30 cents plus.
25
or
whatever.
That 30 cents is gonna come in 8 more times a year.
Correct.
So that's where you get a little bit extra on the processing.
It's funny, my daughter saw a bill come in the mail and my husband, she said to my husband, why haven't you changed that to e-bill? Like, well, and he didn't have a good answer. She was like, stupid, nobody pays big checks by email, by cleaning up. And I think it's gonna go away. And I think that we can really, as I'm sitting here looking at, the goal of WFWRD, and part of that is sustainability and recycling. If we can educate, and I was surprised 28,000 don't receive a paper bill. Is that correct? Is that what I'm saying?
That's right.
And that's without any encouragement to do that. So I think we can eliminate a good, I don't know, maybe you could run numbers. If we didn't have to pay postage, you didn't have to pay printing, could we get that down to a little bit more reasonable cost to do monthly billing and kind of even out the gains and the losses on that? Just throwing it out.
So that's like, what would it take to balance that out? Sure, I think it's a good question.
And you know what, we're already printing, if it's going out in the mail, let's add a big disclaimer. If you want to save and you want to be responsible for recycling and saving the earth, go online and list how it will be if you just do an ACH, it'll be this much. If you do credit card, then it's this much. I don't know if you want to be that transparent because we don't want everything looks bad, but that's my feeling is I think down the road we need to be early adopters of pushing people away from getting a pay-per-view.
That whole comments. I think, I go back and forth, because I think that the convenience of monthly, everything else I do is monthly, so I don't know why it, honestly. But as we increase these fees, and we've had these discussions, okay, we got to increase fees, how can we save the costs? Would we as a board, let's say it was monthly, we said, well, we could reduce costs by $660,000 if we went quarterly. Would we do that? Would we say that? Would we say, well, that's a lot of money we could save, let's add that to the list of savings, plus we've ripped some positions that we've added to the pie of things that we can save money on. I mean, if we put ourselves in that position, I might say, yeah, monthly's great, but yeah, I'd save $660,000 to go quarterly. I don't know.
And then, may I?
Go ahead, Ben.
So, and it's a good question, right?
As a consumer, I want monthly.
Yeah,
On the board, the money's that's where my mind is.
gotcha. Yeah, and, you know, do hindsight being 2020, do I wish we would have done monthly from the get-go? Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely, especially, you know, over the years and having this cash and fund balance change dramatically. And would we have, you know, been able to foresee that? I mean, we used to have $14 million in cash. And when we moved to quarterly, $4 million went over into AR. $4 million went into AR and it didn't hit. And it was like, oh, all of a sudden we had 10 million in cash and it stayed there. So like, okay, you know, and now we're down to 6. So, you know, it's my interest in this and looking at it is really sustainability for the district and making sure we have the cash
Can
flow.
we go back to the line graph, the bank balances and cash expenditures? I guess because as Sherry was saying, I thought was a really good point, like, the money's gonna come in, whether it comes in monthly or it comes in quarterly. So I guess part of me is just trying to figure out how big of a difference the cash flow that's really going to make.
But
Because it's
we
coming
can-
in regardless.
We can bring back more information for next month if you'd like. Am I understanding, are you talking about the line graph?
This,
Yeah, can you go back up, Renee?
Can I ask if you do that, if you bring a bigger graph, because you only have to take a really small picture, and if we looked at a graph
That
over the last 8 years or something, it's gonna show a story. This is a little tiny snapshot, and it doesn't even reflect the rate increase of the last years. So it'd be nice if the graph was more reflective over a history.
Like 1 year or something?
Yeah, exactly. Because tons of this was because of those trucks. We carried money over for a while. We could get trucks for a long time. So I just want to see a more reflective picture of one of the good time.
Lori, go ahead.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to mention is eventually though, when you do that cash flow analysis, and we really need to see that monthly breakdown so we know when our lowest month is, when our highest month is, where we have concerns about what's coming and what's not, and have a sense of what that cycle of expenses are for us, because there are going to be higher months and lower months depending on what's going on and what's happening. So I think it's key for us to understand what the lowest month and the lowest point is, which is helpful in this graph to see what that closing point is. But for me, I'd rather see literally our lowest point is projected to be 4.2 million, or you see what I'm saying? Not so much a line graph. I want to see the numbers. What is the lowest month projected for next time around? What is the highest month projected? Where are we at? So we can actually gauge how much we're comfortable having cash on hand in case of emergency and stuff like that. And what is our policy on that, and make sure we're abiding by that policy, and that we're meeting what needs to be an emergency cash flow balance on account. So those are some things I think we need to make sure we're comfortable with the policy of what is our cash on hand at all times for emergencies, and make sure we're also comfortable specifically with the number of what we have in cash on hand each year. I know entities who are special districts that they're comfortable with what is required by their thing to have cash on hand for emergencies, and that is their minimum balance. And so for them, you know, that works. We've always had a greater balance because we've got money in the bank for those with the trucks and things like that. But that should actually probably be showing up in a line item specifically for those, so that we know that that is already called for and spoken for and going out. So we truly know what that balance actually is, what we need to replace trucks for and those type of things, and what is truly emergency cash on hand. So I'd kind of like to see, and maybe I'll work with you on a little bit different format when we report this next time. I have an idea of what I'd like to see, and I'd love to give that to you guys specifically so I can gauge this a little bit better.
Thanks, Mary. I think that's great advice. I think one other thing I'd like to see on this is a projected, if we were on this other system, let's get a dotted line for what did last year look like if we were on the system, what did this year look like, and what would next year look like on this new system? As kind of a highlight.
I just love Laurie's, this is Sherry, I love Laurie's idea as far as, because that would take away that it is because of the trust.
It's a guess.
It's away what was already allocated out of there because we're just a carryover. Take away the carryover stuff, or not take away, but make a different color in there so we understand that carryover money is already allocated for trucks, it's not cash on hand.
Yes.
It's a cash on hand, but it's
It's
already
like,
it's
it's
for
Fund balance. Fund balance as well?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
sign that.
Good idea.
With-
Yeah.
it was really good.
Okay, so it sounds like, go ahead. I'm not sure if it was up first, so. Go ahead.
Okay, what I'm curious about is how do we start charging transaction fees? What's the process for doing that? I think that would be a really good idea, and I think it would help defray the costs, and it makes sense to me. So if that's, maybe I'm inserting this at the wrong time, but I think that would be really helpful. And I know my citizens did a picture of my food, so I'd like to be able to have something they can plan on. When we raised taxes, that was the feedback we received. We understand we have to pay this stuff, but we don't want to get hit with everything right at once. We would prefer to be able to plan on it, to be able to budget it, and so that's my feedback.
Thanks, Dan.
Of how?
Marcy?
Marcy, last one with Sandy. I'm really enjoying this conversation, especially being a newer, the new year. The only thing I would say I would add is the value of proactive and outreach. So we've already been talking a little bit about an education campaign around the cans and using the can well. Like you really emphasized that. So I think what would it look like to have an education campaign also be about the efficiency we are pursuing? So before we introduce, I know we've introduced it in a way through the survey. I really think a proactive approach to here are the things we are doing to find efficiencies, to reduce our costs. And I don't know if we want to go as far as clarifying, because I think that was a good discussion as well, clarifying the intent of the question in the survey. I don't know if we want to or not, but I am a big proponent of before I am ready to get behind any kind of increase, we proactively communicate all of the efforts that we have made historically, which comes back to Lori's point, building kind of historical narrative, and what we have on the horizon, what we will do to look for efficiencies, and putting it in a public-friendly narrative rather than the language that we are accustomed. I'm still learning the language. So that would be the only thing I would add. I feel like the conversation we have had before, I feel we are in a place to even vote on this would be, what are we doing to proactively educate and inform our community, our stakeholders on some of the reason why we collected this survey data that we collected, how it is informing our proactive approach to looking for efficiencies, what is our advocacy for why this is even being considered. So a bit of this education and storytelling thing. I feel like it's appropriate to come for of increases.
I just want to comment. Thank you so much for putting that average tenure down here. I think that 10-year interest is done through two different political parties and COVID. So it seems like it's a pretty good And so I think that this interest rate line at 4% really should be adjusted to the 3% because it seems like a more conservative number to approach. So that would make our savings a little bit less on that too. So if that's a 1% change in money that we would save that we'd have to make up. Thank you.
Do we have any idea how much we spent on postage annually to mail out? I'm sorry, maybe you've already shared it, but to every household that's been, what our current spend is?
All right.
92,000 a quarter.
No, that would be the quarterly increase.
Oh,
The amount quarterly is 138,912 right now. On a
38,000.
quarterly basis, 138,912. It's on the table up there on the screen.
Great.
Yeah, where it says printing and postage, isn't it?
$500,000. When we sign someone up that's brand new to the district, do they have to opt into an e-bill versus a paper bill? Do they automatically, meaning, could you put someone that's brand new, the only option is an e-bill? You don't get a paper option, meaning can we phase this out? Also, the thought is, could you, and I have had this happen with multiple organizations, if it's even banking or credit cards, where they have said we are no longer doing paper statements. And could you pick an age demographic, not out of being mean to them, but out of love and compassion, over X year, where we're just going to let them continue on with this? Because, to be honest, my grandfather, I'm not even going to wish upon that process, how they would navigate it, and it would be very, very difficult. Could we then say by X date, just FYI, we are going to e-bill only? Please make sure that your payments, you have an email, if you give them some sort of a leeway to try to phase this out to where that $500,000 a year is no longer cost. And also, as we talked about doing monthly billing, that cost that we're talking about for the increase, we can also figure out how to address that, bring it down, not add additional costs, but still do the monthly billings that's best for the district. We may just have to make some of those decisions about what's best for the board, and as we transition to a more current use of technology, feel like we have that due diligence on behalf of our residents to look at those things and make those decisions.
Thanks, Bill. Robert, you have a comment?
Yeah, I appreciate everything we're talking about and just being sensitive to tax payers. Pocketbooks. We go back to the blue and orange chart. I think something that's missing here is a line that shows income. Because I think the income line will represent or demonstrate that the expenditures have been higher than what we've been collected, therefore justifying the rate adjustment.
So the revenue, we're talking about
Yeah.
the revenue stream.
I think if you get to show those two lines, because I feel like showing that will then justify by the blue line the balance is dipped so much. What we're trying to do is correct the new line against the orange.
Gotcha.
Emily Gray Holiday. I really appreciate what Matt said about looking at kind of just phasing that out. I think that makes a lot of sense. It really, the other thing along with that is when people are opting into the automatic payment, if their first option is the ACH, which doesn't have a fee associated with it, then they don't feel like, oh, one way or the other, I'm having to pay this. And then if they choose to use their credit card or whatever, because they want miles or whatever, like they can opt for that. But they can hopefully see like, we're not trying to increase your costs. I think that's a fantastic idea to do too.
Do we know what an e-billing costs in comparison to postage?
I don't.
Pennies.
Yeah, it probably is. I don't have that information.
It would be penny. I mean, it's
But I
considered an email. I mean, it's an email.
Yeah, the issue is if you go through a company that does that, it's not going to be.
We're posting right now. The question is it on volume or not?
Yeah. the question is also like, if we are having a company do this as an outsource, it's gonna be more expensive than in-house. But how are we doing? What is it?
Right now, we are out.
They are.
Yeah, it's actually Express Bill Pay that does it for us. So,
But we
and
have,
I'll that cost, find out what that is.
But we could, you were mentioning one of the options was to go out and shop for options to make sure that, which I think would be part of this process, we were to phase out shop for the cheap option, which I think is a good. Emily, great holiday.
thanks. Nobody else has any more discussion? It kind of sounds like we got a little bit more work to do.
Yeah.
Awesome, which is fine.
Yeah.
We
It's only
don't
March.
want to make decisions at a pace, so, so we'll just table this until next meeting. Soon we'll get this back on the agenda.
Thank you for the.
Yeah, good, yeah, well done, Helen, shout out to Helen.
And did somebody get a copy of that to Lori? By chance, if not, let's do that for her. On to other board business. Does anybody have anything? Just
Welcome to the immigration. A huge thank you again for your support on the dumpsters, the gates, locks that we put on up in immigration. I think a couple other places have done the same. It is a daily, just night and day between the amount of unsolicited trash that has been showing up over the years. Enclosures that you could be barefoot, walk through. It's been a lot of coordination with your staff and making repairs to the case. Thank you very much. A lot of the residents that reached out to make a positive comment. It's working.
Yeah, you're welcome, and thank you too for the partnership, because it takes a team to make things happen, so thank you. And then, did you want to share about RFP?
It's
Still early.
But I would say that I think you just highlighted, even what I was talking about with the recycling bin, each community is just different, right? And we all have different needs, even in our scrapping, some people opted out, some people opted in. I think that this board and this team, this management team is really good at coming up with ideas and making all science fits all. So I think the recycling thing we saw is exactly the same.
And then one more shout out. We had that storm last week. Wednesday morning, we had ice in the entire canyon, and we were able to use the website with the ribbon at the top to indicate that we were postponing to Friday pickup. And that worked well.
Really did.
Again, from 7 o'clock, right and make arrangements. Much
Thank you. Thanks for your help. And that's a big shout out to Yael Johnson, who's our customer service manager. She really navigates that website, but posting them.
All right, looks like our requested items for next month's board meeting. Is the 2025 first quarter financial report, audit, okay. Release of properties, tax sale requests for Suffolk County Property Tax Committee. Placeholder for the reclassification of the FTE allocation driver and right in here. Monthly billing. Anything else, anybody else? Let's see.
Cost reductions, I think there's been a couple things that we talked about.
Yeah, that'll be on my report. Yeah, my general manager report.
And it looks like we do have a closed session.
Yes, we do. Mr. Chair.
Like, awesome.
A personnel matter that's not going to be recorded, so.
So. Close the public session.